and welcome to this podcast that is sponsored by the Community of Christ. My name is Susan Oxley, and I'm your host today for this episode of Climate Brewing. This is the series that focuses on the causes and effects of our climate change and what we can do about it, the kind of solutions that can help us as we face different climate issues and want to get involved. I'm recording from Seattle, Washington, with my good friend, Justice Manning. Justice and I are members of the climate support group that meets twice a month, and I've invited him to share with me today a little bit about his interest in climate issues, how he got interested, and what he's doing about that.
Well, thank you, Susan. I'm Justice Manning. I live in Daphne, Alabama, which is on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay. I'm glad to be able to be on this podcast.
Thank you so much, Justice. So let's start with a simple question. Justice, how is it that you first got interested in climate change and the environment?
I spent my career as an environmental engineer, called by different names at different organizations. So basically, I've been interested in the environment throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the church, the Community of Christ, has helped me be aware of the need to protect, to take care of our environment. In particular, the sacredness of creation, one of our enduring principles, is very prominent in my consideration. I think our society doesn't give nearly enough attention to such need that confronts us.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my interest in the church and the teachings of the various contacts through my life, I became interested in not only the environment, but as climate change became more pronounced in the, I guess, early 2000s for me, I was a climate denier.
Tell me about that. What was it about what you were hearing that made you a denier?
Beginning in the late 80s and 90s, I became very active in my professional association. I worked with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and a local health department. My first job was with a local health department as a public health engineer. And of course, I was involved with public contact frequently. Since I retired in 1997, I became more active in the southern section of the Air and Waste Management Association, my professional association for air pollution control. The state climatologist had reams of data showing that climate effects on the environment were not of significance.
Okay.
I supported that position for a long time because he made presentations at our annual meetings, very convincing, very knowledgeable climatologist. So I supported his views along with many other people. And then as data kept being released through news items, I started looking at the situation. Until the late 90s, we lived in Ohio. When we moved south, I noticed we seemed to be getting more hurricanes, strong thunderstorms, and read about fires in the West, etc. So I started looking more closely at the data, not in detail, but just the effect on the environment. And that's when I transitioned from being a denier into being somewhat neutral.
Now, have you personally experienced any of the effects of hurricanes where you are?
No, we've been fortunate. We've had 4 rather severe since we retired. This is as long as we've ever lived anywhere. 28 years we've been here. And we had 2004 and 2005, 2 years in succession. We had 2 pretty severe hurricanes. In 2005, I think it was Katrina. And most people heard of Katrina. But we were on the western edge of the eastern edge of that, so we didn't have any bad effects. In 2020, I think it was, we had Hurricane Sally, which hit our county, the southern part of our county. It wasn't nearly as severe as Katrina, but it did a lot of local damage because of the heavy winds. But again, we've been fortunate.
Yeah.
We were living in North Carolina, but 1979, Hurricane Frederick hit the Gulf, and my dad suffered. He was without power for 2 weeks. It wasn't quite as bad as Helene in North Carolina, but it was pretty severe damage. Well, we came home. That it happened in September. We came to Mobile in Christmas time, and it still looked like a war zone. I'm not sure it hit a direct impact in this area, but it was very close because, like I say, it looked like a war zone. I think it was 2010 sometime. One went just east of us, went up through the town where I was born in southern Alabama, and it did some major damage. But again, personally, our family has been fortunate. And then the church climatology team started sponsoring the webinars on the climate colloquy.
That was the North American Climate Justice Team.
Right. And I couldn't think of that. So anyway, when those seminars or colloquies were announced, I've attended most of them. I've had to miss a few, but the more I heard, the more convinced I became it's something that we can't take lightly. So I became a strong supporter. And then after a couple of years of presentations, the people wanted to start groups that would do something about what we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. And I became a member of the climate support group that needed to learn how to talk about climate change. Mm-hmm. And that's how I became more familiar with Susan and with the opportunity that we have to each individual to do something about it simply by talking about it, like Miss Hayho says.
Mm-hmm. Was that a struggle for you to change your opinion?
As with most things, and I think most people, change is a struggle. Whether it's a view about the environment, a view about doctrine, a view about the name of the church, change is a struggle for me. And just to give you a little more context, I'm 89 years old. So, yes, it was difficult. But it got to the point I couldn't deny the evidence.
Mm. I understand. That takes a lot of courage. So, what prompted you to get involved with a couple of local organizations that deal with environmental issues?
At some point in our travels, my wife bought me a shirt, a little t-shirt. It said, "Stop me before I volunteer again." My nature is such that I feel like I need to be doing something. When I retired, I went to work as a volunteer for our county extension office, who had started a program of teaching school students, starting at second grade, elementary, up through high school, and some civic organizations like the civic clubs, Rotary, Lions Club, etc. making presentations to these groups about the environment. I did that for 20 years. When I got too old to carry the demonstration equipment, I felt like I was not doing anything. So one of these exhibits that I was attending, the city in which I live, the environmental programs manager and I ran into each other, and I gave her a synopsis of my background. She says, "We need you on our environmental advisory committee."
Uh-huh.
So I applied. They accepted me. I became active in that. And then my wife and I have always felt that we need to keep learning. We had a group that met twice a year in the spring and the fall about lifelong learning. One of the courses that we took started on the Wednesday before the world was closed down with COVID, March 2020. We had one class, and the rest of the classes were canceled because of COVID. But on that first class, one of the men, in fact, the teacher who was going to present the material, he was a world traveler. He had been to Africa and some of the islands of the South Pacific. And he mentioned a local organization called Gulf Coast Creation Care.
Mm-hmm.
So I started attending. They had a monthly Zoom meeting. I attended 2 or 3. I liked what I heard, so I joined as an official member. And that group is conscious about trying to keep the environment as pristine as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I became involved. I was invited in one case and took the initiative in another.
Wonderful. And what are those groups doing? How are you assisting?
Personally, because of my physical and hearing situation, which is part of the physical, I've been trying to resign on the Environmental Advisory Committee for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
And the chair of the committee says, "You're too valuable." Well, the main contribution I make is I edit the minutes each month.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take the minutes because the work they're doing is primarily water related, and I'm an air pollution person, or used to be. And so I said, I can review them. I'm kind of picky. I like things to be correct. So they gave me that job. This committee tries to post information for a special day each month on social media. A couple of them are Indigenous Peoples Day, is August the 8th each year. World Environment Day, Sunday / Energy Efficiency Day was this past September. It's September the 21st each year.
Mm-hmm.
And the one for this month is National Recycle Day. Anyway, I prepare a short blurb on each of these days, send it to the chair committee. She has it posted on the social media by the computer experts. So those are the 2 jobs that I'm doing for the advisory committee. I don't view them very significant, but apparently she does.
Providing those paragraphs about the special day, Environmental Day, that's a wonderful contribution. And you enjoy the research and the writing, don't you?
Well, I try to copy it, put it in language that I can understand.
What are some of the other activities that the Environmental Advisory Committee for the City of Daphne has done?
The one that we just completed brought to fruition was planting about 65 species of native plants so that people who move into this area, they have a place they can go. It's a central place about 3/10 of a mile around an old golf course. You can actually see the plant in existence. This time of the year, they've been blossomed quite well over the spring and summer. And do the QR code, and you can see in real life what the plant looks like. We have a slight description, a short description of the advantages and disadvantages of that as a landscape product for this part of the country. On the committee was a professional forester or something, or his knowledge had to do with forestry. And he was familiar with all these plants. But they asked me, because of my pickiness, to edit it and put it in language that the average person could understand. I'm a rather simple person, so my vocabulary is not very large, but I know what I like to read. I first of all checked with the author to make sure I had not messed something up in terms of meaning. But it's only, in most cases, it's at most 4 sentences, and some of them are short. There's a few rather long sentences. But what I did was just try to make it understandable.
There's a sign for each of the plants?
Yes,
And
the
you were
common
involved in
name
this?
and the Latin name is on the sign.
Okay.
The QR code, and that's the purpose of the QR code, is to get to the description.
And that's on the internet then.
Right.
So you just had the dedication of that nature trail a little while ago, didn't you?
It was November the 1st, to be exact. I'm not sure that we called it a dedication. I think it was called a grand opening of the native plant trail. We put out notices inviting people to come with an enticement of giving away 3 different species of trees that are native to this area. Those species were live oak, red maple, and Eagleston holly. But I would guess there were over 100 people there. And as I mentioned, it's part of an old golf course that had been discontinued, I guess, 10 years ago. I'm not sure. The mayor was available. He made a few remarks. But one of the statements that the mayor made said, "This is one of our committees in the city. This one is active."
Well, congratulations. I'm so glad that it was successful and that you had the grand opening. Now, what kind of other projects do these different groups have in mind?
Well, the advisory committee gives advice to the city on general environmental projects with primary emphasis on stormwater. And that's why somebody else has to take the minutes. Not only is my hearing a problem, but I'm not as familiar with stormwater as I used to be.
Mhm.
My first master's degree was in water resources.
Oh,
My second master's degree at University of North Carolina was in air pollution control. So I've got a good background, but memory is not the best part of my body either.
it does slow down a bit, doesn't it?
But some of the other projects, in addition to stormwater, any kind of environmental issue that may come up, the city environmental program managers are responsible for. For example, we have discussed some of the zoning ordinances based on the effect on the environment around a given subdivision. The Gulf Coast Creation Care, they're sponsoring a free weatherization project program, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a full day I understand, quite rigorous. You can become certified. So we've got some contractors who have signed up for it, especially rural contractors, I understand. I think I've mentioned to you in the past the forest therapy trail, which in our case was a trail of about probably half a mile, maybe a little over, of signs in the woods that you could stop and meditate. It had some suggestions for each station to how one could meditate on a particular aspect. And I did that trail. It was quite enjoyable. This has been a couple of years for that, I guess. But projects of that nature to help the community become more aware of, as our church calls it, the sacredness of creation is one of the objectives of that group, the Creation Care Group. Anything to help keep our environment, physical and emotional, I would say, is something that the Creation Care Group seems to be involved in. They got started by having read a book in their Sunday school class, and after they finished the book, kind of like the North American Climate Justice Team, we've talked about it for 2 years, let's do something. So this 2 or 3 people in that group looked into it, and that's when they decided that they couldn't join a national organization since they didn't have one. So they took the initiative and established a 501(c) locally.
So how hopeful are you about the future of our planet?
Well, as we all know, there's a lot of reason for despair, but the reason I'm hopeful, I still have faith that God is in charge. And I don't want to leave the impression that just because of God being in charge of his creation, that we don't have something to do. Section 68 of Doctrine and Covenants: do many things of your own free will. I think God has charged each of his creation to do what he's given us the ability to do, so that his work, we won't have to depend on God for all the work that needs to be done. So hope is a two-way street, I think. I think God is patient. Just like me, a strong denier of the need for man to give attention to climate. That was pretty prominent in my thinking for several years, probably 6 or 8 in the mid 2010s. But God was patient enough I came around to the point that you can't deny some of the effects that are happening over the world. And that's the other aspect of it. It's not a local problem. It's a global problem.
That's true. And you're one of the people that's helping to make a difference, Justice.
You're kind. Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, for your interest, your continued interest in the sacredness of creation, and in making that difference, and doing anything that you can as the opportunity comes. I think I admire you and respect you for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.